all of you to Bindu Vinodhan, my mentor. She has done her master's in education technology from Oxford University. She has been a learning and development head with various organizations, which includes Bank of America, EDS, Vodafone, WNS, and won many awards to excel in the same field. So welcome, Bindu. Right now, she is doing huge work. She's adopted a village, which is so inspiring. So Bindu, I wouldn't get into your introduction. We want to know it from you, that how, where did you all start being so successful in your own career? Then you suddenly take a U-turn and come back and try and do something which, honestly, when I sit back and think about you many a time, I wonder, why did Bindu do this? What inspired, while all of us would want to do this, right? But what inspired you to do this? What gave you so much of courage to do this? While we would want to do it, I would say I don't have the courage to do
it. Right. I think I would be able to express it best through pictures. So I can just take you through my journey, if that works for you. And then maybe once the pictures are, I share that with you, then you can ask me any question or anything, but I just wanted to show you, my journey through some very, very important moments of my life. So sometimes pictures, can share the emotion, the journey, the confusion, all of that more than anything else. So if you're okay with it, I can just share my screen and take you through the pictures.
Yes, please. Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. It has a little bit of my introduction as well. And then I will take you through my journey as well. Okay. So just give me a moment. I'm just sharing my screen. So here's my journey, and also part of my life journey. So once first part of my journey is, of course, I finished my studies, came into the corporate, did everything that I needed to do in the corporate, had a blast. Many people ask me, did you enjoy corporate? And I said, more than I can say. I really, really enjoyed it. This is my family, big part of my life, as a woman, as a professional. These are the people in my life who really, really anchored me. It's tough to be the family of someone who is doing crazy things all the time, but I owe a lot to them. This is my dad, and a big part of who I am today and what I do today is because of my dad. And he always told me that everybody lives for themselves, and you validate your life when you live for others. And he practiced that, and I really never got it for a very long time. Now when he's not there, I get it so fully, and I can't tell you how much I miss him every part of my journey, but I know he's watching us. My sisters, they are incredible strength for me, and I can't talk about my journey without mentioning my sisters. My daughter, she graduated recently and came down to India. My love for animals, and my other family member Tashi, a beautiful part of my life. I'm also a dancer, and I dabble a little bit in Mohiniyattam. It's my passion. So 20 days a month, I work with corporates. I do facilitation. I do transformation facilitation, both leadership, business transformation. And that's my first organization that I started after I left the corporate world. It's called TILLT. And, I work primarily to support the NGO. And 10 days a month, I live in a tribal village in Odisha. And this is the village that I live in. It's called Chuliaposhi. It's in the northern part of Odisha. Everything that you can tick on the box on what can go wrong in a village is there. Desertified land, no access to water, no access to electricity, mud houses, dilapidated state of the houses, employment, very few sources of employment, a lot of migrant labor. At some point, there were a lot of people in the village who had committed suicide as well. And because of unemployment, kind of bonded labor exists in this part of the country as well. A lot of children with no access to schools, no hope, except this was a village that had some form of weaving and very few people holding on to their craft, almost extinct in the village, but a few people holding on to their craft in dilapidated condition looms. When I hear that, a lot of India is electrified, I smile because there is, in this particular village also, there was just one bulb in the entire place. We work very closely with the villagers, and near the village there are schools like this. If you can see, many of the children here have been rescued from being trafficked. In fact, a couple of children here were sold for 1,500 rupees. We just the school teacher who runs this got them back for 3,000 rupees by paying that much. That's where the village was in. So it was very necessary to work with the youth of the village. So we spent a lot of time meeting with people, talking to them, finding out what could we do. We were not getting any help from from the government, or from, in the beginning we were struggling to find even a place to build a community center. When we spoke to the women of the village, one thing and only one thing stood out, which was the lack of hope. And when hope is not there, there is no light. But after our conversations with the women, we realized, and some of these conversations, as you can see, this is in the evening once they come back from work, and then we use our mobile phones as light here to talk to them. 21 women stood up and said, we want to change our destiny, and we want to do, and what is it that you want to do? And then they said, we want to do weaving because that's part of our heritage. We were thinking that we would do agriculture or something else with them, but they wanted to bring back weaving. See, life in the village was completely different. I'm a city born and bred girl, never experienced the life there, but this is my team, at the village, and we were looking for places to build a community center. Many times when I hit a wall, I would think, what am I doing here? Do the villagers even understand what we are trying to do? And one day, the oldest man in the village, and he's Raghu Mausa to me as well, and he calls me Jio, which means daughter. He stood beside my car and he said, my daughter, will you come back again? And that was the moment I knew that I had to go back. I had to go back because the biggest gift one human being can give the other is the gift of hope. And hope can move mountains. And that's the day when I said I have to learn more. Spoke to Dr. Janak Palta, who has done the same thing in Madhya Pradesh, tried to learn what all this was about. My MTech was useless, right? I mean, I had to learn new skills, travel 3,000 kilometers across Odisha, and meet artisans. Kabir Raj at this point of time is no more. And many of people like this, they're beautiful art, but in dilapidated conditions. And this is the kind of fabric, and this is the kind of yarn that is being woven, completely extinct as of now, dying. As we speak, it is dying. Kabir Raj, the artist who made this, is no longer there. And we realized that there's just exquisite fabric and weaving, and especially amongst the tribals, but it's almost extinct. Bidyadhar Mahanto, we met him, 150-year-old loom. Next generation is not so keen on continuing it because no access to markets, very bad conditions, in terms of getting raw material. We realized that Odisha has a history of natural dyes that goes back to 3rd century. And however, now there are just 4 colors that are remaining. So we knew that our story was about revival. So we started with Tantagatha as our brand, the story of weaves, because there is a story in every weave, in every weaver, and the tribals, the weaves that they make are full of stories. All that getting lost, needed to revive. This is a picture of our inauguration. My family would be very amused looking at me like this. I'm not a religious person, more spiritual than religious, but I sat there for 2 hours, doing this with them. But it was the beginning of hope when we started. So we, some more pictures of life in the village, all new experience for me. And meeting some amazing people, learning some amazing craft. And that's when we started with our center. And we built our center. The community center was built, and the first session was held in that center. This is the center. The tribals donated their livestock shed to us, so we moved the goats to one side, and we took the remaining side and put 6 looms in it, and we started our class. This is the first toilet in that area. In fact, it's like a museum piece. People come in and see, oh my God, there's such a big jungle out there. Why are you telling us to go into the rooms? But women realize now the self-esteem, preservation, their privacy and things like that. And they value it now. This was the inauguration day on October 2nd, 2018 is when we started our center, our first center, and women started learning to weave, and women were learning weaving. We were giving them stipends. They were earning for the first time. Self-esteem increased, but life was not easy. One day, 2 people from the upper caste came to our side, this side of the village, and entered the room, and they said, just because you're doing all of this, totally drunk, don't think you are something big. You're still the dust under my foot, and came towards them to physically molest or attack them. And the women, for the first time, I don't know in how many decades or how many, maybe 100 years, took their brooms and slippers. The 3 women that you can see here took their brooms and slippers and chased the men out of the village. There were a lot of repercussions for that, which I can tell you sometime in a later story. It wasn't easy after that, but it was the first time the women stood up. And for me, this was one defining moment. It was 2 days before Women's Day, incidentally. So 200 of us tribals took out our drums and, wore our finery and danced and sang. My professor, Dr. Davis, and his wife, Dr. Kathy Davis, both of them came in for this, and we had a grand celebration. For me, this was it. This was truly a Women's Day celebration, the first Women's Day celebration in the village. This is my story, Smita, and now we are working with the women in a month. In fact, today I'm going to announce the launch of our brand, because we are beginning production in 20 days time. We've got our logo and all of that. Our work, which was in one village, now is moving to 4 villages. So this is a little excerpt of my story, Smita. There's so many, there are so many stories. Every time I go, there is something new that I experience. But I thought I'll give you a short glimpse. Yeah. So open to questions, anything that you want to ask or you want to share.
So, Bindu, today I got to know that Women's Day we celebrate as a corporate Women's Day, working Women's Day. But this what you celebrated, or this what you called it as your defining moment was actually the Women's Day. That's what we are thriving for, right? The status of being equal, the status of not feeling intimidated, standing for yourself. I think that was a true definition of International Women's Day, whatever you call it. I feel that why do we need one day to celebrate? But I had goosebumps, really. Listening to your story, this is amazing. I mean, there has been instances when somebody has come towards me to say something, and I'm being a city girl, Okay, even for me to stand up and to give it back to them. Okay, it could be on the road. It took me a lot of strength, and after that also I was quite shaken. I remember a few instances when somebody would have done something wrong on the road, and I tried to. I can imagine the status, and I consider myself to be a strong woman. In all definition, we are supposed to be strong women, but imagine people who come from where you had been, and they have never been exposed to. I mean, amazing.
Yes, thank you for that, Smita. I want to mention something else. What happened after that? It created a huge ruckus in the village because this was unacceptable. And we were summoned by the panchayat, and we were sitting in a place where there were all of the men gathered. I guess me and a few members of my team were the only women there. And they asked me that these women have never looked into our eyes ever before, and now they never even lifted their eyes and spoke to us, and now they have the audacity to chase us. I mean, this requires an apology. And in my mind I was thinking, really? I mean, is this what happened? I realized while I was sitting there, I was supposed to be scared, right? Because it is, they're summoning us and things like that. And they were going to attack one of our members as well. So it was a very angry gathering. And in my mind I said, we've crossed the first milestone. I mean, the women have stood up. So I was actually saying, yes, when they said that, though I said, I apologize for any misunderstanding and all of that, but I was not apologetic for the women because they learned what self-esteem was. Um, and that is not an easy thing. And it's hundreds of years of being told, you're the lowest, you're the lowest, you're the lowest. And now they stand up for themselves and say, you cannot touch me, you do not have access, was a big one for me. And while they were all aggressively shouting, the the villagers, I felt hands on my back. And for me, Smita, like, I've been in the corporate world for many a time, and many a times we feel we have to say this. Why was this? I should have said this. And maybe there is some fear. I don't know, something, some hesitation. Sometimes we take things. But when I felt all the hands on my back, it was that moment where a switch suddenly went off. And in my life, it was no more fear. And I want you to know that, I've just stopped feeling fear. My family is very upset, and they are like, it's why, there are this area, that area, going into the jungles, all of that. But it was that moment, like, they're all here. This is my family. And their hands meant something to me, and that was the end of fear. So now the only things I'm fearful of is some snakes and reptiles that I've still not lost my fear of when I'm walking here and there. But I think I don't fear humans anymore, So
That
that's been a big one for me personally in my journey. Everybody asks me that, is it, you're doing so much that side. And I said, I have to let you know that what's happened to me and my own personal transformation, even if I live 1 million years, I believe in afterlife. So even if I come back 1 million times, I will not be able to even give back one by infinitesimal part of what I have got, just for my own self, for my own realization, for me to know who I am and, what I am capable of as a human being, my own needs and purpose. It's been such an enormous journey for me, and still on. Every day I fall and get up and learn something new. I can keep telling you that we need another 3-4 calls to tell you how many times I've fallen, hit a wall, learned it the wrong way, and then got up. And
that will be one interesting piece, because you are where, I have to say that many women are inspired by you. Whenever I speak to anybody who knows you, they'll say, "Ah, Bindu." Okay, and there are many people who want to do what you're doing, but now I hear you saying, "Smita, I've fallen. I have but stood up and learned my lesson." So, any such story that you would want to share with us, which made you feel that, am I doing the right thing, and am I stuck somewhere, or I've hit a wall? If you could share one of those stories which could inspire many people who are listening to you today.
So Smita, it's not one, it's like many, many small things, right? So when you're in corporate, when you're in senior leadership roles, you're kind of like, I'm the queen of this place, and, things happen for me, and, I get lots of perks and attention. Once in a while, you go and cut Women's Day cakes, and, you do all of that, right? But then you stand outside Tehsildar's office in the hot sun with a file, and you're shooed out 15, 20 times. When you go to government offices and you say, I want this to be done, and they look at me like, in this sari and all of that, sitting, and they say they can't ask me for anything, right? They can't ask me for any special payment or anything, because they see this lady sitting here with a file for many, many hours, and they say that, why don't you send somebody, aapke kisi bande ko bulao, ya send somebody of yours here. I say, no, I am the one who's going to sit here. So when you stand there and you're rejected, you apply like a citizen applying for, this is our entitlement, and you're pushed around, and you're asked to come back in 10 days. 10 days is never 10 days for a piece of land, just to do the community center, which is an entitlement of this group. It was 2.5 years of being pushed around, till I decided that I could either succumb to the system, or so that's when one of the tribals donated a livestock shed. Then I bought a piece of land there, a small piece of land, to say that we have to circumvent. It's not easy. It's so easy to give up. There are places that when I traveled, you're not used to not having basics like a toilet or a decent place to sleep in the night when you're traveling, especially into remote places. And I learned that these amenities may not there, but I had companions with me in my journey, people like Gobind, Lijo, Praveen, Kishore, and my team members, Basant, and all of them, who were part of who were there to hold my hand and say, we are there, who tried to make it as comfortable for me as possible. And you realize that material things, yes, you remember that I didn't have this during that time, but support that you get from people, and what's really important is that, because that allows you to go ahead, is what I realized in my journey. Many, many days I would feel, am I even safe here? The safety, and as a woman, you face all of that. But just the love and protection of, my family, I call them my family, who stayed with me, who knew this was all new for me, and who were there with me. Some people standing outside my door in a dingy hotel room in some remote part of the state, and just standing there outside for me to ensure I'm safe. Those things, Smita, I cannot forget. And I cannot say how much I value human connections and human bonding. My journey is about love, Smita. It's not about social work. It's about love. It's about love that exists. It's about the power of love. It is about how human beings, when they come together, they can create realities which are, you know, things that is unimaginable. So for me, those are the lessons that I've learned. Like, okay, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, government did this, they did that. All that is okay. They were my fall. But when I got up, I realized how much I was loved, cherished, and really protected by group of people who I now call my family. You know, and I just truly realized the meaning that the world is your family, right? So
Vinod,
those things can't be taught.
absolutely, it cannot be taught. I think it came out of your pure experiences and your ability to give and not expect, right? I feel that is also so strong that I always see you that you are such a giver that the joy that that love that you spoke about, right? It comes very automatically to you, and you have a very optimistic perspective about everything. Is that the reason of what you are today, where you have been? uh, do you ever look at the negative side?
No, I want to bust some myths here, you know. One is about the giving. Okay. It is, we are so blessed, right? We are amongst those group of people who have privilege and power that millions of people in our country and outside don't. We are in that segment. And we have so much. There is always enough, you know. I mean, okay, there is, you know, for greed, there is no limit, but we have so much. The myth I want to bust is that how much I have received, you know. So every time I go to the village, there is a lesson, there is a relationship, there is a bond that just fills me up so much, you know. And because I do work in the corporate as well as social sector, my work in the corporate has gone to a new level. Between you, you know, now it's not between you and me. Now this will be telecast. I have never done BD in the last 3 years. It's just been some energy that has, you know, given us that much work that can more than take care of the village. You know, though I want to do much more, and at some point I'm the bottleneck, but it has allowed me to experiment and do what I really want to do. From receiving, like, I feel so full, so full, that I feel that, you know, there is so much more, there is so much. So I want to let you know that it has not been a selfless journey. I have just received so much in terms of learning, experiences, relationships, my own, you know, level of, I won't call it level of consciousness, but the way I look at at the world today, you know, the things that give me a high, and, you know, just the courage that I get to do things, it's all what I have received. So it's not been a selfless journey. It's been, I've been very selfish. In fact, I've got, sometimes I'm saying that, you know, when will I be able to repay this, you know? So truly for me, it's, I have been selfish in this journey. I have learned a lot, yes, and
You're being
got a
modest, clearly. But tell me, uh, from being a head, learning and development head in a really amazing organization and receiving so many awards for the kind of work that you do, okay, to going to village and working there for 10 days every month. I hope I'm saying the right thing. 10 days every month and living in that mud house that you just showed us. Okay. Cushy job to a difficult situation. How did that happen? As in, I saw the journey, but did it happen one day you woke up and you thought, okay, I'm going to do that? How did that thought come to you?
I was receiving an award from, on behalf of my organization. We had got the top 15th or 16th company in the world in L&D. It's called the ASTD Awards, now ATD Awards. So I was in Florida and in Disney World, actually, the massive stage, lights, the works, and I was going upstage to receive the award on behalf of my company. So I walked up the stage, I took the award, my name was, flashing, company name, and all of that was happening. And it was supposed to be the biggest moment in my life, right? I mean, this is typically the Oscars for somebody in my profession. And I didn't feel anything at that moment. So I thought maybe I'm on such a high that I'm not feeling anything, but I thought I'll come back. And, I came back into my room, and next 2-3 days, I was not feeling anything. So I called up my friends and they said, you're just too happy. You're too excited. And that's why it is like that. But there was something that started in me that day that, is this it, Bindu? This is so all about you, is this it? Is there something? I'm a huge believer that the universe gives you signs at every stage of your life. You either pick it or don't, and it is up to you, and you decide what to do. And I knew that this was so big for me that it was a sign. So I came back to India from the awards, and within few months I resigned. I had no clue what I wanted to do, but I knew that this wasn't it, and it was time for me to shift. I knew it was going to be something with people. So I quit my job and I started my own consulting organization because I needed funding. And I started volunteering with another NGO. And I learned the ropes. I was working with women who were trafficked and commercial sex workers, and really took me aback. And that is when, after a year, I said, if I've started my own consulting organization, I should start my own NGO. And that's how I started. And I got into this area because somebody told me that, why don't you women victims, they are a small percentage, but if you look at the tribal and Dalit community in India, that's the technical word for it, you should explore that. So 3 months I studied that, and I just Googled, and I said list of below poverty line tribal villages in India, and chose the bottom 5 because I knew nobody would be there. Nobody would have picked that up. So let me start there, and wrote to people in those places. And this was the first field visit that I went to. And I went into, Gobind was the person who was from that village who had responded to the email, and went to the village, and I stayed there. That was it. Then it was a hard thing. I couldn't dream of going there and saying, okay, I will go to another 4 and then I will select amongst that. I just couldn't. I just went there, and within a few hours, I knew that this was it. This was the place. So it was totally heart after that. So I used my brains a little bit before that, but after that, it was only heart. And then went to the village, kept going back, started learning their language a bit, and then started communicating. Now it is, it's all family members, and now it's a different thing altogether. Yeah. So we are now in this village, Julia Poshi. We're expanding to 4 more villages in the next 2 years. So we have lots of dreams. Yeah.
That's
Yes.
awesome, because I always used to think that what happened, what switched. So Bindu, you mentioned about working with women who were trafficked. Can you tell us a little more about it, and what kind of work is required in that space? And your work, what did you do there, and how it helped
Yes.
you? Yeah.
Yes. So this was a program that I was helping the other NGO with. It was a program for women survivors, and also women in lower economic groups. And it was for them to become entrepreneurs. So the program was to help them develop entrepreneurship skills so that they can integrate back into society with really their head held high in that respect. So with a lot of self-esteem, and they come back as somebody, women who have huge agency and are able to run their setup. So I was My background in leadership development helped there, because I was able to support that NGO in designing the curriculum and taking them through it, making it simpler enough, getting them to understand leadership, taking care of teams, finance, and things like that. And that's why I needed to understand that. Yeah. So that was the work that I was doing with them. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Bindu, just moving in from there. Now, a lot of people from HR or diversity and inclusion will be watching this conversation that
Yes.
we are having, right? And
Yes.
if you know that diversity, inclusion,
Yes.
CSR are main agendas in a lot of organizations, right? Is there any message from you for all these folks? You know,
Yes.
there are a lot of people who want to help and
Yes.
who didn't know how to help. So
Yes.
is there anything that you would want them to start thinking, and you know, I don't know
Yes.
if you could help them or how this can flow in?
Yes, so happy to share what I now know. I also was at some point of time looking after DNI for the organizations that I worked in. And DNI for organizations, in a lot of times, becomes an agenda. It becomes about policies. It becomes about how are we going to get the numbers in. And now that over the last 6 7 years and looking at this, I believe that there is a lot of inner work that needs to be done for diversity and inclusion. In fact, inclusion comes first, and having inclusive mindsets, having people who understand what truly the value of inclusion is, progress, enhancement, growth, transformation, development. All of that happens when every person develops. It does not happen when few people grow and develop. The growth, development of organizations, societies, communities happen when every person is included. And so for me, it is about the inner game. Once we work internally on our own, especially leaders who are leading it, and sometimes it is so unconscious, we don't even know that we are working through those. And there are some blocks that we have to unlock within ourselves. When we unlock the mindsets of powerful people in organizations and communities, then they drive agenda. So then it is not agenda, they drive transformation. So I feel a lot of it is policies, processes, all of that, but a lot of time needs to be spent in unlocking um, the minds, and really helping people see what it means to be truly inclusive. Only when there is a congruence of what the mind says, of what the heart says, and how the body behaves, when there is total congruence, there is when we get resonant leadership. And resonant leadership is required for driving inclusive organizations. Impact of that, it is a no-brainer. It's already been empirically evidenced that there's huge potential in that. But if it just is an agenda, then you don't see that. When the leader resonates is when organization resonates. So I believe that time and effort need to be spent on mindset, unlocking, transformation in human beings. Only then can you drive agendas. Yeah.
Just building on what you're saying, that unlocking yourself, being your inner self being in congruence. And if I have to go back and if they hear this conversation, what are the 1 2 or 3 things, or at least one thing which should be done? Okay, while I understand, okay, we should be the leader should be not talking about themselves but also developing the community. What is that one quick or 2 quick things you think organizations should start or embark on, saying that this we should be doing to be a diverse, to be an inclusive organization?
Yes. For me, it really starts with knowing what is it that we as an organization want to do. yes, there is profit, there is one part of it, but what are the other dimensions? So I'm a very, very staunch believer that you attract the right kind of energy when the energy is to raise the consciousness of your own organization to a level that you're saying that we become a force for good for the world. It's important for organizations to become a force for good, not just for their industry or their organizations, but when you do consciously, when you go about doing business, conscious business, is that when you raise the energy of your own organization to a level that you are now thinking about not just, like a little bit of profit here and there. You are just going expansive. When you program expansiveness within your organization, then the fringe benefit of it is expansiveness in numbers that will come if you're being a force for good. So I would say that as an action is to look at, what's, especially people, not just people, so not just organizations, I meant people, teams, communities, to look at how privileged and powerful are we, and with our privilege and power, what is the impact that we can do, what is the possibility for being a force for good for people around us. There is huge amount of energy in being a force for good, and we are naturally like that, Smita. We don't have to, all our fights and all of that comes from our own inner insecurities and fears. So when people start transmitting force for good, they decrease the fear in each other, so we interact without fear, right? And when we interact without fear, we are really thinking how yours and mine could mix together to form exponential, right? We're not looking at 1 + 1 = 2. We are saying yours and mine together could be exponential. We don't know what. So I feel that, it's very idealistic to say that, but just to say that what I have huge privilege and power, I decide now what I want to do with that. There are millions who don't have a voice, right? That's what the name of my foundation is, Mauna Dhwani Foundation, the sound of silence. There are so many people in the world who don't have any voice, any voice. And we have forums and voice and privilege and power, So there is a reason. There are more than 7 billion people on this planet, and not one DNA similar to the other.
Absolutely.
We were created to be unique. So why was that? What is the reason that we were created? What is our uniqueness going to add to the world? So for me, it's that, it is about helping others see their uniqueness and what they can voice to the world. Can they bring their unique voice to the world? And people in privilege and power can do that. We have the voice to do that for ourselves first, and then for people around us. Yeah. So I think that for me has been my biggest learning.
Yeah, so beautifully said, actually. I mean, each word that you have said resonates, and it actually, that exponential growth, unique, and you and I come together and can have an exponential growth. Amazing things, Bindu, and a lot of learning for everybody who's listening to this. One last question, and I don't want to hold you back, but there's this one last question. There will be women who will be looking forward to this conversation today. Yeah. What would be your key messages to this group of people? They could be in corporate, they could be somebody who wants to do something like what you did, they could be a mother, they could be a housewife, right? So what would be that 1, 2, or 3 key messages that you would want to give them?
Right. I'm not, I would, I don't want to be patronizing or say what people need to do. I mean, who am I to do that? But I'll tell you what I've learned. What I've learned is that unless you have self-love, you have self-worth, you have self-esteem, and you take care of your own needs, your basic, your emotional, your transformation, whatever you want, you take care of your own needs, is when you're able to give to the world. Only if your pot is full can you give to anybody. So take care of yourself and ask yourself, what do I need? What do I want? What are my desires? Unless we hear our own voice, we are not, we cannot hear others or help anybody else take their voice anywhere. So for me, my biggest learning has been that unless your own pot is full with, very clearly knowing, am I taking care of myself? How much do I love myself? How good do I feel about myself? Only if I'm feeling full can I even attempt to help others realize where they are and how to make themselves full, right? So self is, for me, it's about that. So for all the women, who always, many of my women friends put themselves last in the list. Sometimes they are not even there in the list. So you are the hero of your story. And if you're not there, if you're not full, there is no story. So take care of yourself, just take care of yourself and listen to your beautiful voice and ask, what do I want? What do I need? And ask for help, ask for help, because that's why we are. Otherwise, we would have been born all alone. We are social beings. So take care of yourself, love yourself, understand your needs, hear your voice. And when we do that, we feel so full. And when our pot is full, we can, just do whatever we want in the world. Yeah.
As usual, while so much modest that she is, sharing, giving back to us some really key messages out of her conversation. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure, Smita.